Sony. Okay, well, that's a big topic.
Well, not exactly. When you think of Sony, I'm not talking about Sony of today or
Hmm.
even Sony of this century.
Yeah,
Think back to the Sony you grew up with of the
I'll tell you.
70s and especially the 80s.
Yep.
What was Sony known for? Let's
The,
go.
the
Uh,
Walkman.
well, we're going to get to that, but high-end electronics. Look at that, huh? Isn't that a beaut? I was having a conversation with Troy on Friday night's last call, and I told him how I went on eBay and I found a Sony upscaling DVD player, one of their first models of one of those types, the ones that could upscale DVDs to HD, and I found one on eBay for under $50, brand new. And when I took it out of the package, I marveled at just how slick the design was, and it made me think that I don't know if we get that from electronics these days, and maybe I'm just not buying high end enough stuff of the stuff that's out now. But I remember a time when part of the selling point of electronics wasn't just their what they could do functionally, but also their design. And look at this beauty with all the knobs and the buttons and everything, right?
Yeah, I had something very, very similar to that growing up. Yeah, yeah. And
Did
oh,
you have
let
a?
me tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
What was really awesome about it, I know this is, people don't really think about that these days, but when you would put on like the smooth jazz and you'd turn off the lights, you know, that
Mm-hmm.
thing had all these beautiful, especially with the visual
Yeah, arrays. Yeah,
tuner. Yeah,
yeah.
you know the equalizers and stuff.
I
Oh, it was
missed
just
those.
beautiful.
Do they still make those?
Oh, I'm sure they do. Whether it's Sony or other brands, yeah, very
Right.
similar.
Well, I
Very,
don't know
very
if
similar.
Sony does anymore either. I'll get into that later. But yeah, but when I just remember as a kid, my dad would buy electronics. He'd get all sorts of like he had turntables and stereo equipment. I don't know how much Sony stuff he had because I remember Sony. I always thought was the high end stuff, like it was the premium electronics you could buy. I don't know if that was your memory. I mean, there were plenty of other good brands out there too, like
Right.
but I just didn't remember Sony was always like I guess the prestige brand I want to say. The stereo receiver you grow into, not out of. Look at this. Look at this. This is from a magazine. We used to have those back in the day.
Yeah.
And if you look up top, you see the young married couple, right?
Yeah.
And you see the receiver in the base unit, and it says you grow into. And then look at all this equipment next to it. He's got a turntable on top of it, and I'm not sure what's next to it. Is that a tape deck, or maybe that might be what it is? And the idea is you could keep adding on to it. Isn't this an interesting thought? There's a TV over there. Isn't this an interesting thought that you could buy a piece of equipment and the idea was you were supposed to own it for a long time and you
Yeah.
would just add on to it instead of just tossing it out after it broke after a couple of years. I like this a lot.
Yeah. Imagine that, right?
Yeah. I mean, did you grow up with any Sony products in your household? I mean, we're going to get to the Walkman in a bit, but anything else? Like, did anyone in your family have a stereo, or was it too high end? Because I know I don't think I did, so I'm not
Well,
judging you
Sony.
right now.
See,
Yeah,
I I grew up in the '70s, and so the original phonograph stereo. You
yeah.
know, it was one of those big wood units. This is before Sony started to get popular in the U.S.
Hmm.
So I can't remember what it was. If it was like Magnavox or something like that. It was something that predated Sony. One of those huge things. Like, you know, no one would steal it because they couldn't carry it the F out, you know?
I seem to recall Magnavox. They were American, correct? That was an
Right.
American electronics company.
Exactly.
Yeah, we did make electronics here in the United States at one point. It did happen,
And the TV
and
was
it was quality
Zenith.
stuff too. It wasn't, junk.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and the TV was Zenith.
I remember
Also, a
Zenith.
big wooden box, that you couldn't carry out. Hell, it was me and my dad trying to move the thing a foot or two so mom could vacuum behind the damn thing. You know?
Well, you have to get because well, sometimes you would have to vacuum the TV out too. Put the vacuum up to the TV to get some of that dust out, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
you
right.
absolutely had to. They kind of accumulated.
Let's get a closer look. I have to say this might be where I'm getting where I was maybe too young to fully appreciate this stuff, but I was always fascinated by this stuff as a kid. Oh, well, you press the button and the light comes on. You put the tape in there, and there are all these knobs to mess
Yeah.
around with. You know, and if you look to the side, like over here, I think this would be like for phonograph or tape deck or radio or something like that, right?
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I always like fiddling around with this stuff. Look at the. I think that's a smaller headphone jack, but that's for the larger ones. Remember the larger headphones you would get to plug in with the
Oh,
larger
sure,
jacks
sure.
on the end. I remember those. But yeah, do you know what this is?
Let me
One of the
see.
earliest boom boxes.
Oh
The
my gosh,
boom
yeah,
box.
yeah. They got much bigger. Ironically, they got bigger, right?
Like that.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Did you? I think even if you didn't own one, you knew someone who had one, right? This
Sure,
was
yeah,
always a
yeah,
thing.
exactly.
And you always watch movies in the '80s. You'd have the kids on the street, and one of them has the big boom box, or like a gang member would have the big boom box on his shoulder, or maybe it'd just be kids doing some break dancing or something, right? You'd have the boom
Yeah,
box.
and I
I don't know.
did. I
Yeah,
believe it or not, I was a break dancer.
I believe you. Okay.
David Pansek says, "Remember the introduction of the soft eject cassette door?" Yes, I do, and my stereo did have one. Yes.
Is the soft eject? Let me see if I can guess what that is. Is that where you just push in the door and it pops out?
Um, that there is that. I think that
That's
came
not what you're
later.
thinking of. Okay, that's not what you're
Originally,
thinking
you'd
of.
hit eject, and it would just go boing, pop open, and then later it would
Oh,
click, and then it would slowly open up. There must have been some sort of
oh
a
yes.
hydraulic in there or something.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, because that's right. On my dad's professional equipment, you would hit the eject, it would come out. But if I had something lower end, it would just pop out. I
Yes,
remember now. Yes,
yes,
yes.
and David says the boombox took 6 to 8 D cell batteries. Yes, that's true. And I'll tell you, if you don't know what a D cell battery is, though one of those is heavy as hell. If you put one of those in a sock, you could beat someone to death with it. Think about what 8 of them are, then think about them in a big metal box like this.
Now I have an image of Charles Bronson putting some D cell batteries into a sock and hitting someone on the street with it from Death Wish or something.
You know,
He used rolls of quarters instead. But
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is what you mean, Lady V. And welcome, by the way. But
yes, welcome.
yes, you did need to know how to strip wires because if you had speakers, the connection was not like these days where it was just a jack and port. It was a wire that you had to strip. There had to be some
Yep.
frayed metal there to slip into a little clip.
I remember that. I remember when I messed around. I had to get my dad's help with this when I got my first surround sound system, which was a Pro Logic system because they were at that point they were cheaper because they were trying to phase those out in favor of the 5.1 system. So I got the Pro Logic system, and he had to show me how to fray the wires. And I guess he did it
Yep.
all the time himself because he was big on home stereos and stuff like that. Here we go. There's the big one.
If you want, you can also share the what I'm sharing below. That was the Walkman I had
Can I
when
take
I
a
was
look
a
at
kid.
that? Look at that.
Yep, it had stereo, a microphone on it. It also had the feature that when it got to the end of the cassette, it would start playing the other side.
I didn't have a Walkman that did that, but I had a knockoff Walkmans that did that. And you guys don't understand that when it would do that, that was an amazing feat of
Yes.
technology. How it would just clip to the other side, and it would go to the other side of the cassette, and you wouldn't have to take it out and put the other side on, which was a big pain in the butt. You could just wait for it to do the click.
Because
Yeah,
auto reverse feature. Yeah,
auto reverse.
because you got to remember the this was very you guys all have MP3 players or you listen on your phone and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, so you can listen to music and you could just do it for hours, right? If you were limited by a cassette, you got 60 minutes of music and that was it.
Yeah.
And if you were at that 30-minute mark and you were in the middle of, if you're running down the street because you're jogging or you're in the middle of a set of on the bench press or whatever, you did not want to stop to change the music,
Yeah. No, you didn't because it's a pain, and it's especially if your hands are occupied with other things or whatnot, or yeah.
I will say one thing I didn't care for that I think we've got that's better now is those headphones there that just the sponge that just kind of sat on
Awful.
your ears. You didn't get great sound from them. Yes, it didn't kill all the noise around you, which I suppose is an upside. But yeah, I sometimes have to cup my hands over my ears to really hear a song well. You know.
Were the Sony ones at least comfortable to wear?
Oh, sure they
Because
were.
I would get like knockoff ones of those, and sometimes they would like pinch your head because I got a big head anyway, so they would like pinch
Oh,
your head, and it was just no uncomfortable. I'll say this: I do like the earbuds that came with the iPod. In fact, I'll even say this: the iPod was one of my favorite inventions, probably of the last 30 years. I'll say that because
sure. It wasn't that they were uncomfortable. The problem was, like I was just saying before, if you're jogging, they didn't hold very tight, so they tend to slip backwards, which wasn't cool. And of course, mine was a little bit bigger than that one you're showing there.
that's one
So
of the earlier models. I think that's from '81. Yeah.
the way you held it on was that you wore it like a purse, like or like an Indiana Jones satchel. So what you'd have to do is come up with some clever way to tie it to your hip, so that as you're jogging, it's not bouncing and
I
slapping.
have
your
no
side.
doubt there were Walkman accessories sold either by Sony or third
Yep.
parties that would help you with that. Yeah.
Look at what you can see is on the upper left corner, and just before the mic, right between the record button and the mic, are these little metal loops where you would hook in a strap that came with it,
Yeah.
and it was adjustable, and you could wear it like real tight under your arm, or you could wear it down to your hip or whatever, and either way wasn't real comfortable when you were jogging, but it was really I used it at home to listen to my music in my room because the big stereo was out in the front room. So if I
Right. When
wanted,
you're a kid, you don't always have access to the big stereo. But you get
yeah,
this, you can make a recording. If you don't have a record player, you can make a recording onto it on cassette and bring it in your room and listen to it there. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then sometimes, like I said, when I'd listen to the stereo in the front room, I'd turn the I'd put on the jazz, I'd turn off the lights, and I'd be sitting next to it with the heavier earphones, and my mom would be like, "What's wrong?" She thought I was being all emo. This was before there was emo. I'm like, I'm listening to some jazz, especially like around Christmas time and stuff. She's like, well, you shouldn't sit in the dark. Why?
Oh.
Why? I'm not reading. I'm not doing anything I need to look at. I'm listening to great music.
There's nothing wrong with sitting in the dark. You know what else you could do in the dark? You could listen to like a radio play in the dark too. Because
Ooh, yeah, I
yes,
did that
no matter.
sometimes too.
Yeah, and it was
Yeah.
especially LA Theater Works has the has like famous plays that are done by actors, but in radio form. And granted, I wouldn't. Sometimes I would shut my eyes and listen to them. When I was at work instead of
Yup.
when I was waiting for the paper to upload. I used to work for a newspaper a long time ago, but. Here we go though, but yeah, this was the big thing, and
Yep.
I tell you, I never had a Walkman because Walkman was the premium, and I, of course, was a kid with very little allowance money, and I guess I'm luckier than others that didn't even get an allowance. But
Yeah.
it's just let me add my thing back. All right,
Yep.
but that's the Walkman, and I don't believe these are still manufactured. And you
Probably
can
not.
probably
Yeah.
buy them on eBay, but they're actually not cheap. These are big collector's items now, apparently.
Yes,
So
they are.
people
Well,
people
it's the nostalgia. It's not. I don't think anyone's buying them to use them. I think we have better ways of listening to music these days. But
right.
yeah, it's the nostalgia.
It's neat. It's neat. So here we go. There we go. CD player. I know we did a CD thing once on this channel a while
Yep.
back. We got Sony, of course, had this is actually the first CD player ever made, home CD player made, and it was made by Sony, manufactured by Sony.
Yep.
Look at that. Look at those buttons, huh?
Would
Fast
you
forward,
believe
rewind.
I did not get my first CD player until 1991, and technically I couldn't consider it mine until 1992 because it was bought for me by my beautiful at the time fiance, who kept it in her apartment. It was a 5-disc changer thing, right? She
Like
also
that?
bought.
There's
Well,
like a jukebox.
yes, exactly like that. Right. And because we weren't living together yet, she kept it at her place, and she bought me my my first CD Can you guess what it was?
It was a Prince CD.
Very good, you know.
Not necessarily. It could have been anything, but I figured that was an estimated guess because I know what a big. Plus, I know Prince music was on CD at the time too. I think. So,
Do you know? Okay, let's see if you can guess. And keep in mind the time period. So this was 91, 92. Do you know what the album was?
Purple Rain soundtrack.
No, because I already had it on cassette. She was looking to get me the newest one, Diamonds and Pearls.
Okay, I have heard of that title, but yeah.
Yep.
I was far later. Yeah, see, Jesse Gerardo also said Purple Rain.
See, yeah, I know. And believe me, I mean, after that, you know, then the floodgates were opened, and she got me every Prince album she could find. She even went on eBay to find me the Black album, you know, because it was never legally released and whatnot. And
I got him all the Prince CDs.
Yes, yes, she did.
You were a very nice fiance, I guess later on wife to Troy. I want to say something though. A lot of people, I know that vinyl became very in vogue like during the last decade, and now I think it's basically here to stay again.
Yeah.
The big complaint about CDs in recent years was that they were bad, that sound wasn't as good as vinyl. But I learned later on that the problem with a lot of CDs being produced now is that they were just badly mastered, and that early CDs were much better mastered. And they said they were doing this for radio play.
Yep.
That I guess the CDs were badly mastered because it sounded better through the radio. That's what I had heard. I read that somewhere online. I don't know if that's true or not.
Wow. Yeah.
And I'm thinking, in the age of MP3, you don't need to be doing anything badly remastered on CD anymore. You should just be going back to the old standards.
There's nothing wrong with CDs. I mean, I'm always own physical media, but at this point, if you don't have a good master or you don't have an original vinyl or something that you are converting to digital yourself, you know, or like I said, the CD itself doesn't come from a good master, then it may not even be worth it.
My first CD was Mambo Number 5.
I remember the parody of that song, Combo Number 5.
CDs messed up too easy, and even more so for mixed CDs and home rip songs. They were crappy. Oh, we'll have to do a whole other thing on mixtapes.
That's how they started out. They did get significantly better, especially as they started to incorporate memory. So they would buffer, you know, kind of the way YouTube does now. When you download a stream from YouTube, it buffers a good chunk of that video. And if you lose internet, you may not notice it until a little while later after the buffer runs out. Same thing with the CDs. The CDs would skip, especially, again, going back to if you were jogging. If you're jogging, it would skip and bounce and pause and whatnot. And it wasn't until it started buffering that you could, again, use it in your car, use it when you're driving, or whatever the case is.
I remember, though, I was a late adopter of CDs. I didn't start buying CDs till the late, I want to say later 90s. Because I was a kid at the time when these were out, and whenever I would get music, I would buy it on a cassette, which, big mistake. Don't do that. Because you can always make a cassette off of your CD.
Right.
But your tape you're getting, what I learned was when they would make the tapes and sell the tapes, you would have a master of it, right?
Yeah.
And they would record it from another master tape, and they would just keep reusing that master over and over again to make tapes out of.
And
the trouble is, over time, that tape master
would
would degrade. You were always better off with the CD. But
yes,
remember, I got the Beavis and Butthead experience on tape. I did eventually replace it with a CD, so there you go. But and of course, we had the portable, the Sony Discman. I don't know. I don't know if the Sony ones were better. I remember these things never quite worked properly. The portable CD players. Maybe you had a different.
Like I said, once they started buffering, mine worked in the car pretty well. It was really interesting because, you know, just how you into the jack where you would put the earphones.
Yeah.
You could also, there was a jack that instead of going to earphones, it went to something that looked like a cassette. And you could put that cassette into your car cassette player, and it would transfer the CD. You do all the controls, you know, on the CD to advance the song or replay the song or whatever, but the song was playing over your radio that way.
Oh, okay. Huh.
You know, that was even before they started doing one specifically that went into the car dashboard, you know?
Yeah, my car that I currently drive, my Honda Fit, it has it does still have a CD player, and it also has the auxiliary to hook an iPod up to. I don't think they make cars with CD players anymore. I think those have been phased out finally.
Yeah,
Which is a
yeah.
pity.
And
Uh,
nowadays I have the ability to, whatever device I have that has a USB port, plug it into the car and, you know,
yeah,
play.
you just do that.
Yeah.
You could even take a thumb drive and plug it into a car.
Yes, you can. That's true.
I was working in a record store in 1995 when CDs came out, priced $25.99 each.
Yeah.
I believe it. They were not cheap when they came out. The whole $9.99 thing. And to be fair, even today they're not even $9.99 anymore. They were for a while.
Well, keep in mind what
they've got up now. They're like 15 now.
$26 back in 1985. Somebody do the calculation for me, but that was a lot more than it sounds like.
More than it is now.
Yeah.
They were not cheap. And, you know, I'm a kid. I want to buy toys. I want to buy video games. So I didn't buy too many
which is
CDs.
why I ended up buying the cassettes, you know, because they were cheaper, you know.
Cassettes were cheaper. I got a Ramones cassette.
Yeah.
Back in the day. But let's see here, though. Well, let's move on. Oh, this was interesting. Maybe I was too old when these were out. I think I was jealous cousins that had it. This was my first Sony. Did you ever hear of these? Maybe you and I were too old for these.
Yeah.
These were Sony products that were designed, I guess, for children to use. And I guess they could take punishment more.
Sure, makes sense.
There's
I'll bet the sound quality wasn't quite as high either as
no, but probably better than what you get for most stuff for kids products. So yeah, I mean,
Lady V says I ripped my own from LimeWire. I remember LimeWire. Yep.
LimeWire.
Yeah,
that
was out there at the time. People used to go LimeWire, Pirate Bay, stuff like that. Yeah, 7328. Okay. Yeah.
That makes sense. But to be fair, the CDs back then were more premium. They came in these fancy, like length-size boxes with the CD in it. I think for Christmas one year, my dad got me the Fantasia soundtrack from the re-release of the Disney movie Fantasia. So I guess he was trying to spur my interest in classical music, so he got that as a Christmas. So I got that as a Christmas present. I think I still have those CDs too, buried somewhere. But yeah. Oh, I had one of those when I was 5. They look neat. I just never had one myself.
Yeah.
Now we're moving on. We're gonna do another brief overview, a couple more electronic pieces. But anything left to say about music devices? This is the Sony Trinitron TV. You ever own one of these?
Yes, we read that, sweetie. That David said that. We brought it up on screen. Thank you very much, though.
The Sony Trinitron.
I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it, so go ahead and fill me in.
Very nice TV, and it's oddly enough, this is the last cathode ray tube I ever bought. Because these were, again, it was the premium stuff. But yeah, this was one of the best TVs you could buy. I ended up getting a model. It was either this model or a model similar to this. This was one of the last before the leap to HD happened.
That's kind of cool looking, actually.
It's cool. Heavy as all get out, though.
Yeah.
Super heavy.
Imagine.
Like, I know you think, like, boxy TVs were heavy. This was heavier than those.
Yeah.
And it's funny because I had an old TV stand. This was when I was going to university again up in Orlando, and I needed a TV, and my parents discouraged me, don't bring your new plasma with you. Someone's going to steal it. So I was like, well, I have to get a TV, and I went to a Goodwill, and they were selling one of these for $35. So I bought one of these. Nice TV.
Yeah.
And I hooked the Nintendo Wii up to it, because the Nintendo Wii,
sure,
despite what Nintendo said, it was a standard definition console meant for standard definition televisions. And I had a lot of virtual console games on it, so I would play my old school games on it. And I had a DVD player I hooked up to it. I wasn't streaming yet, though. For all my talk on the streaming wars yet, I didn't have like a Roku player to hook up to it to like watch, Netflix on or anything like that. But this was back, what was it, 2012, 2013, around then, about 10 years ago. But nice little TV. After the flood happened, though, I finally got rid of it, though, because I had it in storage. But I'm like, you know what, I'm not moving this thing to the next storage unit, and it's time to let it go. But I miss it. I miss cathode ray tube TVs. Did you have one of these? What was the name? Sony Vaio computers?
I did, as a matter. In fact, I still have it.
Is it good computer?
It was okay for its time. Yeah.
Windows based, right? But like a
Mhm.
premium Windows based. So if you
Yeah.
were like a Windows more fan of Microsoft stuff, but wanted to think something higher end like a Mac, you would get one of these, right?
Right.
I think, yeah. I'm kind of envious of that. That looks like a super cool computer.
And of course, the reason I still have it is I keep a lot of my old computers just as legacy to play the games that I could play on them without having to deal with emulators and stuff for newer computers.
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, there's something about just using original hardware to play the games on. Like I like the fact on the Trinitron, I could just hook up my old game consoles to it, and they'd work and look great.
Yeah.
The only thing you couldn't do on the Trinitron was play the light gun games for the NES, like Duck Hunt, because those required a rounded screen, not a flat screen, to work. Isn't that
interesting? I didn't know that.
But most of the other stuff would work. Super Nintendo looked great on it. The PlayStation 2 looked great on it. But a friend of mine has a 50 Trinitron that still works today. Sony makes good products. And speaking of good products, let's get to the next thing that I have to say. I was a fairly early adopter of DVD. I got my first DVD player in '98. I did not buy a Sony, not because I didn't want the best brand, but because I was a Nintendo fan. PlayStation, the Sony PlayStation was the big competitor. I didn't want anything having to do with Sony. So I got a Pioneer DVD player, and it broke on me. I got a Panasonic DVD player later on. It broke on me eventually. I think I ended up with an Aspire DVD player. I think my dad got it for me, and that thing crapped out even sooner. At that point, I think after so many years, I don't know how many years this was later, after I basically said, you know what, the Sony DVD players are now pretty cheap. I'm going to pick one up. I think I picked one up like circa 2002, 2003, and it still works. It was that high quality, even though it was a later model DVD player. It didn't die on me, and so from that point on, I was a big fan of Sony DVD players. Yeah, that's an earlier model. And if you look at this ad, this is a funny ad. Did you see up there in the corner there? It's got takeout Chinese food.
Yeah.
Their Karate Kid trilogy on DVD.
Yep.
And there you have. Here you go. You got your surround sound, your DVD player, your subwoofer. I guess a TV, and of course a Sony Trinitron TV. You need that. And I guess fortune cookies, and you have a night with the boys. See, there you go.
There you go.
You're all watching the Karate Kid movie. See, they all got the bandanas on their head. And this is actually, I brought this up because on Friday I was telling you I bought a Sony upscaling DVD player, and this is the model I bought, and I got off eBay for under $50, brand new.
Neat.
And one of the best buys I bought in a while, and it just looks slick.